girls. Hi, welcome to March 24th, 2020. As you saw there, we got three things that we're going to go over, basically around the work that we handed out last week and a little unboxing of the work that you are picking up today. So hang in there. This is going to be a good one, maybe 20 minutes or so. So here we go. The Don't Lose Your Sanity Challenge was one thing that was handed out last week. These challenges, these are great opportunities for you to take some photos of you participating in these Don't Lose Your Sanity challenges here. There's 20 of them. Take a photo, take a video, and post it to our classroom story. So I do look forward to some challenges out there. I've gotten photos and video of some of you so far, and it's just an absolute joy to see each and every one of you. All right, so the Don't Lose Your Sanity Challenge. There you go. Let's start seeing it. Next up is the one-pager. As I told some of you when you came to pick up your work last week, the one-pager can be completed on any book. However, if you are having a hard time selecting a book, or you just haven't had the time yet to get that book, think about a shorter book. It doesn't have to be a novel. It doesn't have to be a chapter book. These one-pagers could be great if you want to go back and get a book or read a book by Patricia Polacco. Yes, access to things such as a library, and I apologize, that just went very blurry. I'm going to fix that for you real quick. You're going to notice things happening in these videos. These are things that your kids are used to. They happen often, and we're great problem solvers, and we work together, we stick together. So we are going to do our best here to make our screen in focus. Just a little bit. There we go. Let's save it, and hopefully that fixes the problem. So again, a book by Patricia Polacco or Chris Van Allsburg. I've said this before, so think about an author that you would like to study and pick one of his or her books. Again, it doesn't have to be long, and for those of you that have been on Dojo, you have seen the examples of the one-pagers. And there it is again, a one-pager that was created by Mrs. Schnetz's enrichment group. And this is a one-pager done on a chapter book, The Chocolate Touch. And it followed all of the same rules here that are presented on the one-pager directions handed to you last week. All right, so that's the one-pager. Again, the one-pager is another awesome opportunity for you to take a photo or take a video, post that to our story. That way I can get a heads up at what your one-pagers are looking like, and I can print them off and start hanging them up in our classroom. All right, one-pager. Okay, next up are our Readworks passages. This part of the video will take a little bit longer. Most of you received 2, and some of you did receive 3 Readworks passages. One on pets, this one here on antibiotics and what they're all about, and also one on Malala Yousafzai, and I do apologize if I mispronounced her last name. So real quick, not really real quick, but with Readworks, kids, help your parents out here, help your family members out here with your Readworks passages. This is a very large routine within our classroom. And not just that we do them all the time, but they are used to practice our comprehension strategies that we practice within the classroom, especially recognizing the different levels of questioning and thinking as well. So we're going to go over some of these questions. I'm not going to read this out loud, but I am going to go over some of these questions here about the passage itself. So kids, remember what we do. We read the Readworks passage together. You spend a lot of time reading knee to knee and eye to eye with your reading buddies. And so that part of the routine has certainly changed. But when you're done reading and rereading and being okay with sometimes having to reread, excuse me, we are going to go straight into the questions because the routine around the questions has not changed. When we are reading these questions, we are paying attention to the words in the questions themselves to help us to locate the correct answers without necessarily having to read the entire passage out loud again and again and again and again. So here you can see in number 1, Malala is definitely a clue word in this question, and I even included the word born as well. And so what we do here, just a reminder to you kids, but moms and dads, grandmas, grandpas, aunts and uncles, we are looking for those clue words now within the passage simply by scanning, and I'm constantly modeling scanning for you boys and girls. And so remember, as we're scanning, we're not necessarily reading, we're looking for those clue words. There's Malala's name, and we also have the word born. So now we can be confident that somewhere around that underlined phrase, we are going to figure out the answer to number 1. And so it says that she was born on July 12th, that's my birthday, 1997 in Mangora, Pakistan. And when you go back to question number 1, you see that we have the word Pakistan. The word Pakistan, therefore, is going to be where Malala was born. Go ahead and circle that. And you can move on to the next question with certainty in terms of what the correct response is going to be. Number 2, the text describes the sequence of important events in Malala Yousafzai's life. What happened on October 9th, 2012? Well, I underlined the phrase the text describes, so that means we're going back to the text because the question says the text describes. Well, what does the text describe? In order to figure that out, we have to go into the text itself. As we get to the next question, you'll notice that we don't have to necessarily go back into the text. But when we're looking at what the text describes, we want to look at what it describes based on what happened on October 9th, 2012. Dates are great. Dates are easy to find when we are scanning through a particular piece of text. And so as I juggle between making sure that you're able to follow along with the size of the font here, the size of the screen for you here, I'm going to start scanning for October 9th. I'm looking for the capital O. I'm looking for the 9. And from there, I will be able to hopefully locate some sort of help when it comes to responding to questions. Question number 2. So here I am. I'm going to go back into the passage. And I'm scanning, and I already see that big capital O. There it is, and that 9. They just really stand out together. So I understand now that somewhere around this date here, that is one of our clue words that was described in the text, I'm going to be able to locate the correct response. So let's remind ourselves of what the question is. The text describes the sequence of important events in Malala's life. What happened on October 9th, 2012? Well, we're asking ourselves, what happened on October 9th, 2012? And the Taliban was extremely unhappy. Notice I'm reading the entire sentence that contains that phrase. Unhappy with Malala on October 9th, 2012, a member of the Taliban shot Malala in the head. And Just an absolute tragedy there, with a happy ending. But we do know that Malala was shot, and so as we look into the answer choices, we are telling ourselves or asking ourselves what is not the correct answer. And yes, there is a picture of Malala sitting with Obama, but that's not what happened on October 9th. We also noticed that Malala did win the Nobel Peace Prize, but that did not happen on October 9th, 2012. So now we're left with, instead of a battle between 4 correct responses, we have the 2, and of course, a member of the Taliban shot Malala in the head is the correct response. All right, so as I said, number 3 is a little bit different. This is a question where we don't necessarily have to go back into the text, because usually what I'm going to do and what I'm going to inspire you to do is to read the question first. And we know we're reading the question when there's a question mark at the end of the sentence. It says, which conclusion about Malala does this information best support? And this information is right here, okay? This entire section. So all we need to answer this question here is this chunk of text. Malala would not be deterred from her passion for learning. Not only did she continue to attend school, but she spoke publicly about her dissent. On a Pakistani television program, Malala was brave enough to express her disbelief. How dare the Taliban take away my basic right to education? Malala boldly proclaimed. Under the pseudonym Gul Makai, she also began to blog about what it was like as a female under the Taliban's oppressive rule. And so we know from that information that Malala is under very, very difficult circumstances. And so we're trying to figure out what do we know about Malala because of how she reacted and responded during a very difficult situation. She is very kind but reserved. Reserved would be sort of quiet, not necessarily willing to share a lot of the great ideas or feelings, emotions that one would be experienced. I don't think she's very reserved, but she is very kind. I don't think that's a conclusion that we're going to come to when it comes to this particular portion of the text. So we can cross that off. She is very determined and outspoken. Determined would be nothing's going to get in her way. Outspoken would be I'm not going to be reserved. Rather, I am going to express my emotions and my feelings, my opinions. I will, even being outspoken, share the opinions of others who might be a bit more reserved. And looking at this passage here, especially Malala boldly proclaimed, boldly proclaiming is real fancy. Fancy Nancy would say that boldly proclaimed is a fancy way of saying spoke with strength, spoke loudly, spoke confidently about her dissent or her disagreements with her current circumstances. So this looks to be like a great conclusion, but let's move on down before we make that final decision. Mysterious and troubled. I don't think that as I read this, I felt that. And a lot of times you're going to feel what the correct answer is, or you're going to feel what a character is like, what he or she does or says is the way that the author paints the picture. And I don't think that I visualized a picture of Malala being mysterious and troubled. And then in answer choice D, immediately nothing about Malala said that she was lazy. And I can now be confident that she is very determined and outspoken when it comes to reading this chunk of text. Now, there could have been another moment where this chunk of text was a different chunk of text that maybe described Malala in these ways. We're all creative, but sometimes we can be lazy. And so when we are answering questions like this, we are being very careful to understand that if the question is saying, what conclusion about Malala does this information, right, best support, we're only making our conclusions from this particular chunk of text provided. All right, moving on. All right, number 4, why is the rule of the Taliban especially harmful to girls and women? This is a question that is considered level 1, level 2. Level 1 questions, again, kids, are those questions that you are going to be able to scan and you're going to find that answer word for word in the text. And so why is a balance between level 1 and level 2. Level 2 is going to be, you're going to go in and you're going to find it in the text, but the wording might be different. So you're going to have to use a little bit more of your brain and what you know and what you've learned from the information that you've just read. And so I did go through, I did underline some clue words: rule of the Taliban, harmful, girls and women. And so I think I'm really looking for this capital T here for Taliban. So let's go back to our scanning. And we're scanning. And I'm looking for the word Taliban at this point. That capital T is going to stand out, and I've found it twice. So going back to our question, why is the rule of the Taliban especially harmful to girls and women? So we want to look around those two Taliban words on our first page, first paragraph, and see if we can't find something about the Taliban treating girls and women unfairly. And so as we do that, Taliban began to have more authority in the Swat Valley. Taliban, a violent Islamic group, prohibited females from participating in many activities. I see the word prohibit as something, in this case, that is going to be unfair. Prohibiting females from participating in activities, including going to school, is going to tell me what I believe the correct response to be. And so I want to say, hey, from participating in many activities, including attending school, I want to look for an answer choice that has that word school in it. So as we go back, the Taliban stops females from having children on their own. I didn't read that. Maybe it is the case. The Taliban violently forces females to get an education when they don't want one. I'm pretty sure that's the exact opposite of what we just read, so we can scratch A and B off. The Taliban stops females from participating in many activities, and as soon as I see that in many activities, comma, including getting an education, that in many activities is a phrase that is directly in the passage itself, right next to participating in many activities, right next to the word Taliban, and prohibiting females. I am going to be very confident that that's my correct response there. But let's move down here. The Taliban forces families to get rid of their female relatives. I did not read that, but maybe that is the case. I'm not sure. But for our purposes here, answer choice C is going to get us where we want to be. All right. The main idea of the text. In guiding you with this one, what we talk about is understanding that when we read questions like this, the question is going to set you up to try to trick you, because A, B, C, and D is probably going to include information that was included in the text. And we need to begin to think about the difference between something that would be a detail in the text versus a main idea of the text. And so the Taliban, a violent fundamental Islamic group, prohibited females from participating in many activities, including attending school. That is a detail. That is something that we just talked about in question number 4. But was the whole passage about this? The large chunk of the first paragraph certainly covered this material, but the whole passage, by the time I was done reading this, I remember this sense of feeling inspired by Malala, and a main idea like this is certainly not too inspiring, actually very discouraging. So I'm going to be very confident that that is not my main idea. Malala risked her life. Yes, notice I am leaving her last name out. I don't want to mispronounce it a million times. Risked her life to pursue an education and speak out against the Taliban sexist rules, becoming an international icon and education advocate. Gosh, that is very inspirational. I do think that this has a possibility of being a correct response, but I'm not just going to settle there. I'm going to go and I'm going to read my other 2 options. Malala risked her life to pursue an education, speak out against the Taliban sexist rules, and becoming an international icon. Malala was shot by a Taliban member, but miraculously the trauma didn't cause any permanent brain damage. Definitely a detail in this passage, but not what the whole passage was about. Malala's father was in charge of running a local learning institution when she was a child. Yeah, he certainly was, and that is a very clear detail, but not the main idea of the text. And so, as we cross this one off, we can go back to when I read every paragraph about Malala. Every single one of these paragraphs contains something about Malala pursuing education, speaking out against the Taliban's unfairness, and eventually becoming that icon and an advocate for women especially to receive education in areas of the world where that is looked down upon. So those are the first 5 questions. Context clues, kids. Here we go. Remember, it's going to ask you, what does the word prohibit mean? And yes, it's not the word prohibit in the text, but it is a form of the word prohibit with the suffix at the end that is ed, prohibited, still the same word, but is not the way that it's presented in the question. And so we have to be confident that we can find the root word in this case. And so the root word is prohibited for the word, or prohibit for the word prohibited. So prohibited females from participating in many activities. The Taliban were so committed to banning female access. So I'm getting this vibe that the Taliban is keeping females from doing things. And to keep someone from doing things would be to stop them from participating in certain activities. All right. Excuse me. Number 7. Choose the best answer that completes the sentence. This is a cause and effect question, kids. I'm not going to answer this one for you. So when you do something, something happens. When we make a choice that maybe isn't very desirable, goes against house rules, school rules, there is going to be a negative consequence or a negative effect. An effect is a consequence. If you choose to do something positive, like FaceTime a relative and FaceTime them just to say hi. The consequence or the effect is going to be a positive one. And so Malala and her father started to become more vocal in opposition to the Taliban's sexist rules. Blank, a member of the Taliban, shot Malala in the head. Because she did something with her father, a consequence or effect happened. All right, moving on to number 8. Why did the Taliban destroy around 400 schools in Pakistan within 2 years of their control? Here, 8, 9, and 10 are your written answer questions, which we always begin by using the question in our answer. Why did the Taliban destroy around 400 schools in Pakistan within 2 years of their control? I can start this question off confidently with the Taliban destroyed around 400 schools in Pakistan, capitalized, proper noun, because. Now, when I'm using the question in my answer, of course, I don't have to use the entire question, but use the important information that's going to help your answer stand out. And when you use the question in your answer, nobody has to read the text. You've now turned your answer into a complete statement of fact. The Taliban destroyed around 400 schools in Pakistan because here your clue words: Taliban, destroy. Anytime, again, I put a box around that number. You got a number in there, 400. You're going to scan, looking 400 schools in Pakistan. And just as an example, we can start at the beginning of the text. And we can scan. Again, I'm just looking for 400. Boom, there it is. So somewhere around there, it's gonna tell me why the Taliban decided to destroy and feel like it was okay to destroy 400 schools. And so using your question and your answer, underlining any clue words. From here on out, I'm going to be very brief. I'm not going to give you any of these answer choices. I will provide an update with the answers to these questions in a later video. How did Malala react to the Taliban's policies against girls and women? So, react. What did Malala do? Okay, what did she do? Right? Because of the Taliban's policies. Now, we've already answered, 8 other questions about Malala, and we know that the Taliban was treating them unfairly. And so you're inclined to just go right in and write that answer. She was brave and courageous and didn't let the Taliban keep her from being somebody that was going to stand up for the rights, the human rights, especially of females in Pakistan. However, it says use information from the text to support your answer. So I want to read answers that say something like Malala reacted to the Taliban's policies against girls and women by, and then that's your opportunity to use information from the text, aka copy what the author already wrote. That way you come up with a complete answer with details provided in the text. These are my favorite questions. I love reading your responses to these questions, and you've gotten so good at them. The text states that Malala became an international icon. Icon could be a person who is highly respected and regarded. Why might Malala be considered an international icon? This is a level 2 question. You're going to be able to find details in the text, but in this case, you are going to have to find information from the text in different paragraphs. You kind of going on a hunt for anything positive that Malala did. I did underline the phrase international icon because it's in quotations. Oh, speaking of that, whenever you are using that information from the text, make sure that you put it in quotations. That's just showing respect to the author whose information you are using. The text states that Malala became an international icon. That is the clue phrase there. So I can go and hunt for it, use my question and the answer, and whatever information from the text that I'm going to use, I'm going to put it in quotation marks. All right, boys and girls, that is Readworks. The next video that I will post here momentarily will be the unboxing of your learning opportunities that you're picking up today. Yay. It's been a pleasure. This is our first academic lesson here with our new classroom setup. So best of luck to you. Hopefully this helped you out. You can apply these same concepts and ideas to the other two Readworks passages that you have. Alrighty, boys and girls, y'all take care, and I will see you on the dark side of the moon. All right, take care.